Good evening, and welcome to the Canton Planning Commission for August 2nd. As usual, we love to begin with saying the Pledge of Allegiance. And for those of you who may not have a flag, hold on a second. We'll get one on board here for you. If I can get my video up. There we go. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Okay. Commissioner Zuber, would you be so kind as to call the roll, please?
Certainly. Commissioner Acharya?
Yes. Canton, Michigan, Wayne County.
Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes, Canton, Michigan.
Let the minutes reflect that Commissioner Engel is not going to join us this evening. Commissioner Foster?
Yes, from Canton Township, Wayne County.
Commissioner Okan?
Here from Columbus, Ohio.
Woohoo!
Lucky guy.
Go
Buckeye territory. I don't know if we should let him stay in the meeting. It's in Buckeye territory.
Not by choice.
Okay. Commissioner Singh is not yet with us. We don't know if he will be joining us. Commissioner Weber?
Unmute, Doug. Obviously,
sorry, too many meetings today. Present, Canton, Michigan, Wayne County.
Excellent. Nancy, did I call you? Okay, God, my brain. Okay, Commissioner Zuber is here in Canton Township, Wayne County, Michigan, and Chairman Green.
Here at Canton Township, Wayne County, Michigan.
Excellent.
Did you call Commissioner Foster?
Did I call Commissioner Foster? I don't remember.
She says you did. Okay.
Yes, you did.
That's good enough for me. All right. So we're all here, and thank you to those who ultimately will watch us on tape. We did last meet July 12th, and there are minutes generated for that meeting. So do I hear an approval motion for those minutes?
So moved.
Support.
And all right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Okan and support by Commissioner Eggenberger to approve the minutes of July 12th. Commissioner Zuber, could you call
It
the
was
vote?
support by Commissioner Foster.
Oh, I thought
We sound a lot alike.
okay. Well, I saw your lips moving when the words came out.
I was getting ready to do it, but then Summer slipped right in.
All right. I stand corrected. Support by Commissioner Foster. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that, please?
Absolutely. Commissioner Acharya?
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Okan?
Yes.
Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
Zuber, I'm going to abstain since I wasn't at the meeting. And Chairman Green?
Yes. Okay, we've approved those minutes. And we have an agenda tonight consisting of 2 projects. Anything, Patrick, to add to our agenda tonight?
I just have a couple of items to clarify. The first is that we had originally scheduled a public hearing for Ridge Creek plan development, and they were proposing a plan development amendment. They were proposing to keep the same layout of a 22-unit single-family residential development on the south side of Warren Road, west of Ridge Road. The applicants for Ridge Creek have requested to be taken off the agenda. They requested last week to be off the agenda. I'm not sure why they had proposed or requested to be off the agenda, but I do expect them back soon on a future Planning Commission agenda. So I mentioned that because we did send out public hearing notices. We mailed them out to the neighbors within 300 feet in accordance with state law, and we also advertised it in the newspaper. Some of the neighboring residents I've corresponded through email to let them know if they had questions about the development. I answered the questions as best I could, and I did let them know that this was not going to be on the agenda. So some residents who may have wanted to speak at the public hearing are probably not in attendance because they've been told that the Ridge Creek is off the agenda. But for anyone in the audience, Ridge Creek has been pulled from the agenda. When it is rescheduled for a plan development amendment, we will renotice it by mailing out notices again and re-advertising in the newspaper. The other point of the agenda, I don't have a change, but I just want to clarify item number 3 under new business staff referral for Anand Village. Anand Village was approved a couple of years ago, preliminary site plan, and it expired. And so the applicants are proposing to come back with the same 42 unit development at the southeast corner of Geddes and Denton. On tonight's agenda for the staff referral of Anand Village, it's mostly a formality just to refer the application for staff review. So for a staff referral, there's no deliberations or votes by the Planning Commission on that. That will come later once staff has reviewed it, deemed it complete, and then it will be on a formal agenda as a new business action item. So I just wanted to clarify those 2 points.
Okay, so we're not actually referring Anand Village to you?
It will be a staff referral on tonight's agenda, but all it is tonight is to refer it to staff. There's no deliberations or votes by the Planning Commission on an up or down on the development itself.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Back to that. Okay. Anything from the commission to discuss after everything, or anything to add? Nothing? Okay. So hearing none, seeing none, do I hear a motion or from anyone to accept tonight's agenda with the 2 items?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, and I've got a motion by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Zuber to accept tonight's agenda. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes. Okay, moving right along, our first agenda item tonight is a public hearing for Monarch Grove, Canton, where we're considering a final PDD. This property, which is located south of Ford Road between Canton Center and Beck Road, right off of a street called Gorman. Patrick, could you give us more detail on this project?
Sure. The proposal is at the southwest corner of Ford and Gorman, and specifically it's the south side of Ford Road, west of Canton Center Road. And the applicant proposes to construct a housing for the elderly land use at that corner. The proposed housing for the elderly is 224 units on 17 and a quarter acre, which is proposed as 53 units for independent living. There's 102 units for assisted living, 32 units of memory care, and 38 attached elderly cottages. That's a typo. There's actually 225 units proposed. So there's the 53 of independent, the 102 of assisted living, 32 of memory care, and 38 attached elderly cottages. At the preliminary plan development, there were 224 units approved. So the proposal this evening is for one more unit than was approved at the preliminary PDD. And that breakdown is 10 fewer independent living units, 7 more assisted living units, and 4 more elderly cottage units on the west and south sides. The site consists of 8 parcels that are currently zoned R1 and R3. The housing for the elderly is a special land use in both of those zoning districts, and a proposed plan development application is consistent with the requirements for housing for the elderly, with the exception of the modifications that are proposed. Every planned development district is required to demonstrate definite benefits to the community. There are several benefits noted by the project sponsor, but some of the ones that are the most consistent with section 27.04 of the ordinance are, first, the architectural design of the buildings. Another is the paving of Gorman Road to the site's entrance from Ford Road, including reconstruction of the approach at Gorman and Ford to 3 lanes. So Gorman is proposed to have 3 lanes with a dedicated right turn and left turn lane out of Gorman Road onto Ford Road. There is a proposal by the applicant to extend the sidewalk along the south side of Ford Road eastward about 620 feet to connect to the existing sidewalk in front of Bell Tire, which would fill a gap along Ford Road. And there's also a proposal for the addition of northbound and southbound right turn lights at the intersection of Canton Center Road and Ford Road to permit overlapping phases, if permitted by MDOT, because Ford Road is under the jurisdiction of MDOT. As I had previously said, the special land use in the R1 and R3 districts includes housing for the elderly, and section 6.03E and to another degree 6.03A of the zoning ordinance apply to housing for the elderly uses. So the use is eligible in both zoning districts, both the R1 and R3 zoning districts. And as a special land use, we go straight to the subsections in Article 6 to look at the development standards for the housing for the elderly uses. And in reviewing those standards, the application meets most of the standards except where there are modifications proposed. The modifications can be summarized in 6 proposed modifications. The first is the maximum building length. The length of 464 feet is proposed for the main building, and there's a maximum length of 350 feet for housing for the elderly uses. And although 464 feet that's proposed is the longest dimension between any 2 ends, the longest uninterrupted building wall is under 200 feet long due to the variation in the wall angles. At the preliminary PDD review, the building length of 461 feet was approved. So the building length at the final PDD plan is 3 feet longer. And the purpose of the wall length is just to try to break up the monotony of the building and try to not make it as one large building mass. So the applicants have attempted to not make it as much of a long mass by having the angles in the building. The second modification is the maximum building height. There's a height of 42.5 feet proposed for the 3-story portion of the main building. The zoning ordinance for housing for the elderly allows a max height of 3 stories, but capped at 35 feet. So there's a modification of 7.5 feet proposed. The building height is calculated by the average height between the eave and the ridge. The eave is about 34 feet high. The ridge at the highest point is about 51 feet high. The portion of the main building that's 3 stories and exceeding the height is located about 157.5 feet from the Ford Road right away, about 110 feet from the Gorman Road right away.
Is it just me or did the sound just go out?
Just
Did your
you.
sound go out?
You,
Just me.
Greg, can you hear us?
Okay, I can hear you now.
Okay, you sure?
All of a sudden it just went out. Okay.
And then the 3-story portion of the building will be about 190 feet to the southern lot line and about 170 feet to the western lot line. So it will meet the setbacks and it'll be far away from some of the lot lines in terms of that 3-story height. At preliminary PDD review, a building height of 42.83 feet was approved. So the proposed building height is about 4 inches lower. The third modification is the masonry percentage on the building elevations. There's 33.1% brick proposed on the main building and 30% brick proposed on the cottage buildings on the elevation labeled as option 1. A minimum of 50% masonry is required by the zoning ordinance. The remainder of the buildings, in addition to the brick, will consist of fiber cement, lap siding, windows, doors, and louvers. During the preliminary PDD review, the Planning Commission and the Township Board recommended that the architectural plans include a minimum 50% brick. Therefore, the applicant has included compliant elevations labeled as option 2 in the plan set. The architectural elevations labeled as option 1 include more masonry than was at preliminary PDD review. And the applicant proposes those for consideration as an alternative to the 50% brick requirement. But nevertheless, in option 2, as I stated, the applicant has given a rendering, an architectural rendering that does meet the 50% brick requirement, but is requesting a modification from that percentage. The fourth modification is a wetland setback. There's a minimum 25-foot setback required from wetlands, and the applicant is requesting less than 25 feet proposed from any wetland that remains on the site. The fifth proposed modification is a minimum side to rear building spacing. There's a minimum of 30 feet required, and there's a minimum of 60 feet required, and the distance between cottage units 9, 10, and 11, there's 24.2 feet between them, and there's a 30-foot separation between cottage units 4 and 5 and 6. The minimum side to rear spacing is a distance of 60 feet. And that standard is based mostly on multifamily standards. So to have enough spacing between buildings, they have that higher standard. But for 2 and 3 unit attached cottages, a closer spacing is not out of the question. So it's a relatively minor modification. And finally, the sixth proposed modification is the minimum side to side building spacing. There's 27 feet proposed between cottage units 30 through 37. And a minimum of 30 feet is required. The main building does meet the minimum front yard setbacks, rear yard setbacks for the housing for the elderly use. And the elderly cottage buildings will meet the minimum driveway length and the minimum rear yard setbacks for a 1 to 2 story housing for the elderly use. So those setbacks are met. For the traffic impact, many of these comments we had addressed at the preliminary PDD review. And the applicants had submitted a traffic impact assessment that had been reviewed by the township's traffic engineering consultant. And the traffic engineering consultant for Canton Township concluded that the traffic generated by the proposed facility was relatively minor in comparison to a single family development that would otherwise be permitted on that property. And the Township's consultant concluded that the impact on the surrounding roadways was minimal and that the capacity deficiencies currently exist throughout Ford Road, west of Canton Center Road, and are considered regional and beyond the scope and context of that study based on the localized development example. The applicant has submitted the plan materials to Wayne County and MDOT, and we recommend that any recommendation of final PDD approval include a condition that all requirements of Wayne County and MDOT be met. For the density of the project, there's not necessarily a density called for in the housing for the elderly uses in the zoning ordinance, but it does require at least 2,500 square feet of site area for each efficiency in 1-bedroom unit. And the ordinance requires 3,000 square feet of site area for each 2-bedroom unit. Based on the unit calculations on the plans, the net site area of 17.25 acres is larger than the required site area for the proposed 225 units. So the allowable density for housing for the elderly use is less than, or the allowable density is greater than what's proposed in the application materials. So what's proposed is less dense than what the ordinance would allow for a housing for the elderly use. And the residential density of Monarch Grove is within the range of recently approved housing for the elderly uses for Bickford on Canton Center Road, Hampton Manor on Ford Road, and Antioch on Sheldon Road based on number of units per acre. I'll go quickly through the market analysis. There's one included in the packet, but it's the same market analysis that we had at preliminary. For sidewalks and pedestrian access, they'll have sidewalks on both sides of the street along Ford Road, including an off-site connection 620 feet to the east to connect to the sidewalk termination in front of Bell Tire. For the architecture and the lot layout, we've noted the modification that's requested by the applicant, and they've proposed an option 1, which is 33.1% brick for the main building, and but they've also given an option 2, which is 50% masonry. So we can talk about that in more detail when we talk about the architectural elevations. And they've given a similar proposal for the elderly cottages. For the landscaping and natural features, a landscape plan is not necessarily required at final PDD, but the applicants have included one. There are some modifications that would be required should this move to final site plan review, but it is something that the applicant can attain compliance with. And if they can't, they can propose a modification at the point of site plan review. For the parking, the proposed lot includes 43 more spaces than the minimum number required by the ordinance. However, 40 of the proposed spaces are labeled as land bank parking, which are not permitted unless explicitly allowed by the Planning Commission. This was a condition at preliminary PDD review that those additional 40 land bank spaces not be paved over unless explicitly approved by the Planning Commission. And finally, for the parking, the cottage buildings will have 2-car garages for each unit. There will be sufficient area in the driveways to allow parking, and there's on-street parking allowed where there's not a no parking sign, because the streets will be wide enough for on-street parking. And finally, the PDD agreement is consistent with the township's template agreement, and it includes the definite benefits, proposed modifications, and a requirement that all units be age restricted. The exhibits must be completed, and the PDD agreement must address how the definite benefits will be completed to the satisfaction of the township attorney and the township engineer. So staff's recommendation is that if the proposed development modifications and definite benefits are acceptable to the Planning Commission, we would recommend final approval of the Plan Development District, subject to the requirements of Wayne County and MDOT being satisfied, that the PD agreement address how the definite benefits will be completed to the satisfaction of the township attorney and township engineer, and that the building architecture comply with the Planning Commission's recommendation. And that recommendation can either be option 1 as proposed by the applicant, or option 2, which was desired by both the Planning Commission and board at preliminary PDD. That concludes our staff report, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Patrick. This is a public hearing, correct?
That's right.
Okay, so we need a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion to open the public hearing by Commissioner Weber and support by Commissioner Zuber. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that, please?
Sure. Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes, so public hearing is now open at 7:29. Patrick, is the project representative available?
Yes, I see some of them in the audience. Mr. David Endres is the main project representative. I'll allow Mr. Endres to talk. And if there are any other members of the project team, please raise your hand and I'll allow you to talk as well.
Good evening, Mr. Endres.
Good evening. My name is David Endres. I'm Vice President of Senior Living for Kirko Development. I'd like to introduce a few of my colleagues who are also on the line. Matt Kogenauer with Kirko Development is our demographics and market specialist. Chip Hine is on the line with Kirko Development, assisted me with putting together the proposal. Paul Loosley with Environmental Engineers, our civil engineer, is also on the line. He put together all the site plans and civil engineering. And I have our architect on the line, Scott Deisler with PH7 Architects. PH7 is a specialist architect who probably 85% of their work is strictly senior living. So Kirko Development has assembled all the parcels for this project and currently has them under contract. We feel like this will be a great project for the community. Our studies of the area indicate that Canton is greatly underserved. Some of the items I'd like to point out are kind of the result a little bit of the pandemic. Patrick spoke about the building height. We try to build 10-foot ceilings within our units. We find it produces a little bit of a higher end product. We're also installing larger ductwork because the amount of air and ventilation is really crucial now, especially in a senior community. It also makes for a much quieter building. Couple points that I'd like to add, that Patrick covered most of it, but a couple other ones I'd like to add. We do have a draft permit in place from Eagle for wetlands mitigation. Essentially, we'll be purchasing wetlands mitigation credits from the state of Michigan. And really what that means is that this site has I would call, to quote Eagle, a poor quality regulated wetlands. A high quality wetlands will be located off-site and constructed through Eagle. So that's sort of a consequence of this project. The other thing I might add is that this project will cash flow to the Township of Canton, according to our studies, approximately $458,000 of positive cash flow per year. So I think that's an additional benefit that should be recognized. We're very excited about the project. We would like to commence construction as soon as the first of the year is our current schedule. We've offered two options for the brick elevations, for the exterior elevations. I recognize your 50% requirement. This is a building that we have built before. We have a project currently under construction with the same architecture in Clarkston, Michigan on Sashabaw Road, right across from DTE. The building in Canton will be a sister building to that project. We love brick. We're in an 8-story building here in Troy that is completely 100% brick. But we really do feel that the architecture of this project is not hindered by utilizing less brick. We're after sort of this French country theme. We've offered both options. I will also acknowledge that we're in a very dynamic market right now economically in terms of construction costs. And this is at sort of the cusp of viability. So we would obviously advocate option one. The other thing I would add is that this particular site, we've been working on with Canton for a couple years now. One of the very clear things to me is the traffic issues that exist in Canton. This is at a location on Ford Road that necks down to 2 lanes. And we feel this is sort of a Goldilocks project in use for that particular area of Canton. We think it'll provide a massive upgrade. One of the beauties of senior living communities is that they don't really put a lot of load on the surrounding infrastructure, particularly from a traffic perspective. So we think this project, given its natural features and so forth, is kind of what the doctor ordered for this site. So those are my thoughts, and we can, happy to answer any questions anyone might have.
Okay, Mr. Andrews, thank you so much, for being here to answer the questions. What I'd like to do, I think, before we get into the commission's comments, would be to find out if there's anyone else. Well, first of all, I see that your associate Paul has his hand up. Did he want to add something to this?
No, I just was available to answer any questions that may came up.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, sit tight. There might be some.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here. All right. Patrick, are there any other audience type participant hands raised? Do you see any out there?
Right now, I don't see any hands raised in the audience. So if there's anyone in the audience who would like to speak, you can raise your hand. Or if you're on a phone, I think it's to hit *9 to raise your hand. And before we have at least one hand raised right now.
Okay.
And before I go to that gentleman, I did want to note that earlier this evening, I emailed a public comment from a neighbor named Chris Obadzinski. I hope I pronounced that correct, but that was an emailed comment to me that I forwarded on to the planning commissioner. So I just want to note for the record that that comment was forwarded along. So the first person in the audience with his hand raised is Paul Kowalchuk. Mr. Kowalchuk, you're able to speak if you want to take yourself off mute.
Hello.
Welcome, Mr. Kowalchuk.
I want to thank Canton Township, the commissioners there, all of you, for working on this project. It's been a long road with this thing. And you people over there in Canton have been working steadily with Kirko, and I understand. I think this thing is, since I'm involved in this community thing and I'm part of this project, there's a tremendous amount of people, seniors, are looking for homes. I can't say enough about that because I'm a senior myself. People are looking for homes like this. Now, Kirko's got a real great deal going on. I mean, it's just not just that. They also is bringing a lot of things here to the table. One, they're going to bring revenue. That's one. Two, they're going to bring a lot of jobs to this town. There's a lot of people going to be working there, not just the construction. I'm talking about when they're done. They're going to bring a lot of people in this thing. When people see a place like this, it's like going to a Taj Mahal. I mean, I've seen all this stuff and I read everything that Kirko's got on this thing, up and down. I mean, it's an elaborate place, trust me, and I think how everybody thinks, I get it. I just think that Canton's not going to allow anything out of their reason because they got rules and you got to follow their rules. And if you can't apply to Canton rules, well, then everybody's got to move on. That's how I look at it. And I see Canton's been working and it just takes a little time. And I really do believe that this will be a great thing for a community. Oh, I just know that when they get this thing done, heads will turn. I will guarantee you that. Because the way they got it set up, Kirko, how they're building it is really elaborate. I mean, all these other ones that they're building, when they get done with this one, heads are going to turn. Hopefully, maybe Kirko might think of building more into your town. It all depends. And like I say, the board members in Canton, they're not going to allow things because you guys got the rules. I believe this has been a project. I hope it will go through and I'm part of that project. I just hope that it does go through and gets smooth sailing and we have no problems with it, but there's always an if. But I just want to say thank you, Canton Township, and thank you, Kirko, for bringing this project to them because like I said, they will bring more revenue and more jobs to this place.
Mr. Walter?
I thank you very much.
Yes, thank you for your comments, Mr. Kowalczyk. First of all, what is your address?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, my address is 46475 Ford Road.
Okay, and do you work for Kirkall?
No, I do not. I'm
Well,
retiring.
you should be in their ad department.
No. I was a welder for 35 years. I'm all done working. So no, I do not work for Kirkall.
I'm just joking with you.
No, I
define-
understand. I've been here since 1962 in Canton.
Wow, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I seen everything here. Where the
Okay.
township's at there, that used to be Fulkerson's nursery, where you guys are sitting at right now. But anyway, enough of my chit chat.
Yes.
Thank you very much for letting me speak. You guys all have a wonderful evening.
Thank you for your comments, sir.
Thank you.
Patrick, anyone else out there?
I don't see anybody in the audience with their hand raised.
All right, so do we want to propose to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Zuber to close the public hearing and support by Commissioner Acharya. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that, please?
Sure, Commissioner.
Wait, Mr. Chairman?
No, sir.
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Sorry, I was muted. Because that letter that Patrick sent us before the meeting was an opposite view, should that be read into the record or no?
Well, we don't usually read the letter, but he did note that we did receive it. And now that you've noted that it's in opposition, I think, Patrick, that's usually sufficient, correct?
Typically, we'll forward on the email, and then depending on the number of emails that we have, sometimes we had a case a couple of months ago where we had several letters emailed. I think all in that case were in opposition, and we had just forwarded those on.
Commissioner Weber, would you feel better if we did read that in the record as part of tonight's hearing?
I would personally, but I'll leave it up to the majority of the commission.
Oh, go ahead. We have all received it, okay, because Patrick did send it to us. If you feel comfortable reading it, I would ask you to do that, please.
All right. This is from Chris Obudznik, who is a resident of 1852 Crosswick Court, which abuts the property in question. And specifically, it's addressed to the township supervisor. Mrs. Graham Hudak, I have included you on this communication based on your political campaign promises and positions when you ran in 2020 for township supervisor, specifically related to the preservation of our natural resources. There's certainly a need for further development in Canton. However, not at the continued price of every vacant piece of property in the township. This development will destroy 17 acres of woods and wetland in the township. Across Gorman is another piece of woodlands up for sale, which I suspect will be further developed in the interest of residents/community. I am sure at this point or even before you are unable to do anything with respect to this development, but this is the voice of your constituency. Thank you. Mr. Sloan, I hope this email finds you well. I am the resident owner of 1852 Crosswick Court and lived in the township of Canton most of my 44.5 years. I may or may not be able to attend the public hearing on August 2nd, 2021, where the commission will be discussing the final PDD for Monarch Grove. Therefore, I will provide my questions for the record in the event I am unable to attend. Please see below. When the preliminary PDD was discussed, I had pointed out the fact that there are several parcels on this site which are zoned R1 and are therefore not zoned for this particular type of development. I have not seen any request for approval for rezoning. When will the rezoning request be reviewed? 2, when the preliminary PDD was discussed in December of 2020 per the meeting minutes, the maximum building length, a building length of 461 feet proposed for the main building and a maximum of 150 feet permitted by zoning ordinance. For 150 feet permitted for multifamily attached, there is a max length of 350 feet permitted for the general housing for the elderly use. So regardless of which standard is applied, the proposed building exceeds the maximum building length allowed for housing for the elderly use. A, what has been done to reduce the footprint by 110 feet or more to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance? 3, when the preliminary PDD was discussed in December of 2020 per the meeting minutes, the maximum building height, there is a height of 42.83 feet proposed for 3-story portion of the main building. The zoning ordinance allows for a maximum height of 3 stories, 35 feet, so it exceeds the maximum height by 7.83 feet. That is mostly based on the architecture of the proposed building. Mr. Sloan explained how the building height is calculated per the zoning ordinance. The ridge height of the 3-story building that is 51.25 feet is located in the center portion of the building facing northeast, and the ridge height of the remaining area of the 3-story building is 44.75 feet. A, what has been done to reduce the height of the building to the 35 feet per the ordinance? 4, masonry percentage. The masonry percentage is proposed to be 25% instead of the minimum of 50%. The remainder of the building is proposed to be vinyl siding and a 50% hardy plank siding. A, what is being done by the builder to meet the 50%? This development is quite large and will already depreciate the value of the homes in the area, especially if the quality of materials is visibly less than the surrounding area. 5, I will point out that 4 of the 10 worst intersections in Wayne County are all on Ford Road, Canton Center, Sheldon, Lilly, and Haggerty. This is just another added development which has the potential to create a lot of traffic for residents. Elderly pulling onto Ford Road in a 55-mile-an-hour zone, ambulances, medical staff, residents, visitors, etc. The last comment in December that it was not the commission's concern or responsibility was, in my opinion, irresponsible. A, what is being done to manage traffic on Ford Road to mitigate accidents? 6, this development will disperse wetlands in the area. My property backs to this development. I am concerned on how the water will be dispersed in the area from excavation, backfill, etc. A, what is being done to protect current homeowners from adverse impacts to their properties from faulty engineering and site management? Thank you for your time and attention to the matter. I look forward to hearing your response in the meeting or read it in the meeting minutes. Chris Obudznik, resident 1852 Crosswick Court.
All right, thank you for reading that, Commissioner Weber. That letter does bring about a couple of issues, and I don't want to go deep into the weeds on this, but there are a couple of things that maybe, Patrick, you can explain to the audience. One being the difference between an approach, a PDD approach to a development as opposed to the normal zoning changes, et cetera, et cetera. So they understand the ramifications of doing an entire development as opposed to piecemeal. And then the other one would be that letter brought out was about drainage. That's always a concern when we are developing an undeveloped or relatively undeveloped area, is to what happens to the water runoff. What happens to how is that controlled? So if you could briefly kind of go through a couple of those issues, I think it might help people.
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, we have a motion and a support on the floor for closing the public hearing.
Oh, yeah, I guess that was the last of it. Okay, so go ahead, Commissioner Zuber. Would you call the vote on that, please?
Sure,
I think that's proper.
Yeah, Commissioner Charia,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes. And thank you for bringing that up, Commissioner Zuber. I had totally went through my brain there. We were in the middle of that motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Before Patrick answers your questions, just to kind of piggyback on your last point about the water runoff slash wetlands area, I do think it should be addressed to the gentleman who wrote this letter, that specific point, because their properties, or his and his neighbors, do back up directly to this property. So I think the water runoff situation is probably might be the most important point he points out in his letter, especially given all the issues we've seen in the area this summer with flooding and such. So
I think it's a good point, and that's why I highlighted those, to talk about that. That always seems to be an issue with people that live adjacent to a project. So Patrick, have at it. If you could explain how we handle the project the drainage changes. Let's put it that way. How it's going to change from just the natural drainage to a controlled drainage.
Right. Well, the Township Engineering Division does a few different reviews of the development application. At the point of plan development review and even site plan review, the Township Engineering Division reviews the plan mostly for feasibility of whether the site as it's laid out can work. If a site plan is approved by the Planning Commission and the board, the Township Engineering Division does a much more thorough review of not just drainage, but also utilities, water, sewer, grade, things of that nature. In addition to that, the stormwater will have to be reviewed by Wayne County, and Wayne County has stormwater standards for new development that are over a certain threshold of size. So many of these, probably most of the applications that come before the Planning Commission, if they're approved, months later, they spend going through the engineering review with both the township and Wayne County. And a big part of that is the stormwater in terms of meeting the Wayne County stormwater ordinance. So that by the time they're ready for construction or pre-construction, they've had engineering review, they've had what they need to have in place for the stormwater to work according to the county's ordinance. So in terms of any questions regarding the engineering, I usually recommend that people talk to the Township Engineering Division. Sometimes they may be referred to the county if the county has jurisdiction, or but if the township can answer some questions about drainage, usually the Engineering Division of Canton Township is best positioned to do that. And obviously we do get more questions, especially recently with what's happening with stormwater and what we do on a local level for stormwater. And these projects, they do get reviewed for engineering. It's mostly pursuant to the county ordinance, but flooding can happen for a number of reasons. If there's a flood that exceeds, or there's a rain event that exceeds the capacity of a pond, there will be backups. Sometimes it's a maintenance issue in terms of keeping the drains clean and keeping the pipes in the forebay of the pond clean. So there's a number of different things that can cause flooding. And what we try to do on the front end, especially the engineering division and the county, is to make sure that the stormwater ordinance requirements are met and that it's engineered to handle the water according to that ordinance. I replied to Mr. Obitzinski with a few other backgrounds in terms of what a planned development is versus a rezoning. And the reason that the property is not subject to a rezoning is first that the R1 and the R3 districts allow housing for the elderly as special land uses. So a rezoning wouldn't be necessary even if they did meet all the standards and they wanted to apply just for a special land use and not a planned development. So there's not a necessity for a rezoning in that sense. There were concerns in terms of the building footprint, the building length, the building height, and those were items where if it was not a PDD, then that is something that somebody would go to the Zoning Board of Appeals for to seek a variance. But with a planned development district, the Planning Commission and the board can grant what are called modifications, which are like variances where you can be granted a type of development that doesn't meet the ordinance standards, but those modifications have to be enumerated in the planned development agreement. And and we have to also look at the definite benefits to see if the project, including the modifications, is commensurate with the definite benefit and the development as a whole. The two other items that stood out, one was about the masonry percentages. He was concerned about the 50%. And I did note that the 50% was recommended by the Planning Commission and Township Board at preliminary PDD, and that the applicants have submitted a drawing elevation that includes the 50% requirement. There's also an alternate drawing with less than 50% that the Planning Commission and Board may consider. And then the last item that was noted there was the traffic concerns in terms of managing traffic on Ford Road. And Ford Road is under the jurisdiction of MDOT, and Gorman Road is under the jurisdiction of Wayne County. And I noted the previous traffic impact assessment that was submitted by the applicants, as well as the peer review by the township's traffic engineering consultant, Ray Trim. So I referenced those documents in my reply just to answer those questions as best I could.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick. I think the bottom line has always been that development is engineered not to be detrimental water runoff wise to what's already there. Obviously, there's nothing perfect in this world, but the project is going to be designed, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, that particularly where you have paved areas, and it's going to contain and control and move water, not necessarily away, but just in a controlled fashion away from the project or the homes that are already there, so as not to actually cause flooding just by having the project. We cannot do anything about what's going to fall from the sky. However, we can do the best we can in terms of engineering. And I want to assure the audience and the people that do have those homes near there that would be the intent, and is to control the water and not be detrimental to their properties. With that said, let us just proceed into the commission and see what people have to think. Commissioner Okan, did you have any thoughts, comments, or concerns on this?
Just a couple. Patrick, can you refresh my memory? What is the difference between independent living and assisted living?
This is something that the applicants could probably speak to in more detail, but the independent, my understanding is that those are residents that can basically come and go as they please. Some of them may even drive, but I'm not sure where that line goes between whether they can come and go, or if there's some level of dependent care there. But the independent living, my understanding is that they can full use of the building and the grounds and leave the facility, whereas the dependent care or assisted living is they're there and would have to be accompanied to leave the facility. But I would defer to the applicant for the specific definitions on those.
Commissioner Okan, I can kind of speak to this because I've just gone through this with my own father and learned the definition myself. Is that, and Patrick pretty much explained it. Independent living is essentially like a senior going to live in a new home. They have all the ability to move around and cook their meals and take care of themselves and all that sort of thing, but they have all the amenities of the community available to them for social activities and all that sort of thing. Whereas assisted living is the senior may need some level of, I don't necessarily want to say medical assistance, but physical assistance, whether it's getting around or with meals or just personal hygiene, whatever the level may be. So I mean, that's the simplistic difference in it. It's like Patrick said, if the applicant has a different view of it, but that's what's been explained to me recently.
Okay. And then Patrick, can you again remind me the future bank of parking? We have quite a bit on this site, but if I look at the proposed landscaping, we have landscaping where the land bank of parking is going to be. Can you explain what the land banking parking is?
Yeah, the land bank parking, that was parking that the applicant wanted to have as parking that could easily be developed if the facility had a demand for parking such that the existing parking lot couldn't handle the parking. And in many ordinances, land-based parking is sometimes either requested by an applicant or required by a community where it's not thought at the time that there's justification for future parking, so they don't build it, but they may set aside an area for an easy to develop parking lot should the demand arise to expand the parking there.
So that is determined by the applicant.
In some cases, it's determined by the applicant. In this particular case, we requested that the PD agreement state that the land bank parking is not allowed to be built without explicit authorization by the Planning Commission. So at some point in the future, if the applicants thought they had a demand for 40 additional spaces, or maybe it's some number of spaces less than 40, and they wanted to develop more parking in that land bank, they would have to come to the Planning Commission for permission to do that, rather than just implementing it by right.
And if that affected any landscaping, we would modify that at that time.
Right, they would be required to meet the landscape requirements. So the landscape requirements are the more parking spaces you have, the more trees that you have to have, the more landscape area you would have to have. So they would have to account for those additional spaces. And if they were removing trees or shrubs, they would have to either relocate those on site, or they would have to remove them and then replace them someplace else on the site.
Okay, the only other thing that the other comment I had was I'd like to see them do meet the 50% brick on their elevations. Other than that, I am good. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Ocon. Commissioner Zuber, what are your thoughts on this project?
I think it will be very nice. Unlike Commissioner Ocon, I don't mind the elevations that don't have the 50% brick. I think they look very nice, but if the rest of the commission feels strongly about it, I will defer to them.
Okay, and Commissioner Weber?
Other than the water runoff issue which you addressed, I like the project. I think it'll look very nice. The only question I have maybe for Patrick is on the site plan, it shows the proposed future building. Any approval we do tonight, does that mean that building is approved, or will they have to come back through the process to have the PDD amended and whatever other reviews they need to be done at that time?
Yeah, the plan development district is, or plan development districts in general in Canton are good for 6 years. So they would have a period of 6 years in which to get approval and to build that second phase or that other phase on the far southeast side of the building. So what they would do is, if they were to get PD approval and they were to move ahead with the construction on the first phase, they would have a window in which to build that second phase. And if they were to build it, they would have to submit a site plan for it at the time they want to build it. So the site plan may be a two-phase process, once with the main building and then once with the addition, unless for some reason they changed their mind and wanted to do it all within one site plan approval.
Then I guess my follow-up to that is to the petitioner, Mr. Enders. I assume whether you build that building or not is demand driven.
Yes, it is entirely demand driven.
I have nothing else, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much, Commissioner Weber. Commissioner Eggenberger. Any thoughts, concerns, questions, comments, anything?
Yeah, thanks. A couple questions. There's talk of filling in a lot of the wetlands, and the petitioner made some comment about how they're going to create a better wetlands. And my understanding in reading this, and Patrick can help me if I've got it right, is it hasn't been approved yet, right? What they're going to try and do with the wetlands, and when they say they're going to be less than 25 feet from whatever's left? I just need some help understanding this.
Sure. I can address the 25-foot setback, and then the applicant can go into more detail in terms of their permitting process with Eagle. With the proposed wetlands that would be filled, it's on the project development site. And for example, on the south side of the site, there are some wetlands that are being filled for the grading and development of the elderly cottages. In fact, why don't I share my screen here, and maybe I can better illustrate it. So on the south side of this would be the south side of the site. And there are the elderly cottages, and behind those cottages are the grading lines. And then beyond these thick dash lines south of these buildings, it's a preserved area, and many of which include preserved wetlands that are proposed not to be disturbed and will remain. And as a result of the wetlands remaining, the setbacks from the remaining wetlands to the units will be less than 25 feet. Occasionally this happens in plan developments where there's filling, which is done based on a state permit, but for whatever wetlands remain, if the buildings are less than 25 feet, they would require a modification for those buildings to be less than 25 feet from the remaining wetlands.
Okay, thanks. And then we're just waiting to see if they get approval from Eagle. What the hell's that pronounced?
Eagle, yeah.
Yeah, that would be the wetland permitting is through Michigan Department of Eagle. They used to be the DEQ. They changed their name, but it's the same wetland functions.
Okay, gotcha. So that'll be dealt with on their end. And then I guess it sounds like the only other question that is being discussed is about the brick. And I don't have a problem with the way it looks with the 50% brick. And I think that if that's something that we're expecting other places to do, I think we need to be consistent and expect that also of this group.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Foster.
Hello, I am generally supportive of this project. I think it will look very nice. I do agree with Commissioner Eggenberger on the 50% brick, especially since the adjacent properties, the single family homes, also have 50% brick. So I am in favor of that. But that's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Acharya.
Yeah, I am in favor of the 50% brick too. But I have one question about the wetland mitigation credit that the project applicant mentioned. I just want to know what percentage of the ecological losses are going to be offset by the mitigation credit. You know, like this term was thrown into the initial remark. I really want to know what kind of offset are we talking about? What percentage of offset of the ecological losses in terms of the wetland?
And that's a question I'll refer to the applicant, or if there's someone on the applicant's team that would want to address that.
Patrick, I'm not sure if I can be heard at this point.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. This is David Endres. Yes, there's a pretty involved process that we've gone through the last year in applying to MDEQ/Eagle for a permit. This site contains a regulated wetlands at the westernmost portion core of the site. And what that really means is that we're required to get approval from Eagle in order to construct the project. Eagle is required to go to the Environmental Protection Agency, and they're also required to get approval from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Department. All those approvals have been obtained at this point in time, and there is what is called a draft permit in place. Michigan has a policy or regulation which allows for what are called wetlands mitigation credits to be purchased. we are spending over $300,000 to purchase wetlands mitigation credits through what is called a wetlands bank that is under the governance of MDEQ Eagle. And what will occur is that basically the same area of wetlands will be constructed on another site. And those wetlands will be constructed of very high quality wetlands as part of a larger wetlands. Candidly, this wetlands, to quote the inspectors that I met out at the site from MDEQ, is a very low quality wetlands. It's also surrounded substantially by developed area. And so the quality of this wetlands was not considered very high. It will be replaced by a very high quality wetlands. Your question dealt with, percentage. The best I can say is it will be more than 100% replaced. It'll be equal area and much higher quality than what exists there. And so we will be purchasing these mitigation credits through the state as part of the entitlement process for this project.
Mr. Andrus, is that replacement, is that required to be on the same site, or is it somewhere other or locally?
It is required. It will not be on the same site. It is somewhere else, and I can't quite honestly tell you where. It's at the state's discretion. Okay,
so are we dealing with an upgrade of the wetland area on this project? Is that what you're proposing as part of this? Is that what is
not
left?
in a not in a strict sense. I mean, a wetlands, we are obviously providing a lot of a concept here that involves ponds, and we're trying to create a resort feel. But candidly, on the western side of the site, the regulated wetlands are being filled in as part of the construction, and mitigation credits are being purchased to allow those wetlands to be reconstructed off-site.
I see. Okay. So, and then that would be determined by the state, you said.
That is correct.
So they wouldn't necessarily be in Canton then either.
Candidly, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Acharya, did that answer your question?
Yes, as long as it's more than 1:1 or more than 100%, it gives me some comfort that ecological equilibrium is being maintained. So I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. All right. My position on this is, first of all, just generally speaking, this looks like a really, really good project. I mean, looking at the elevations and the layout, I just know, and with your experience, with Kirko's experience, I know that this would be good. But I'm concerned with a few of the details. So maybe you can, either Patrick or Mr. Andrus, you can help me out with this. But since we're dealing with the wetlands areas and the extremities of the project, I noticed that on one of our drawings, I see some trees on the very western part of the project, but I don't see any trees indicated that they would be planted. So it just made me, and looking at an actual satellite photo of the area, I noticed there's a lot of wooded area there. So could somebody explain to me how the buffering and how this is going to look when it's all said and done between these at the southern and the western boundaries of the project? Are we leaving the trees on some issues, some areas? Are we adding trees? What are we doing there?
Sure. There's a proposed landscape plan with the plans, and Specifically, sheet L1 gives kind of a broad overview of all the trees that are going to be proposed to be planted. There are a number of evergreen trees along the western boundary, and then along the southern boundary, there's proposed to be remaining trees to be kept there in the area where it's not proposed to be disturbed. We've reviewed the landscape plans on kind of a preliminary basis, and there's a few standards in the ordinance that that would apply to housing for the elderly uses that we think would result in more trees. Beyond that, we're also going to have some preliminary recommendations that along that south side of those preserved trees, some of them are, based on the tree survey, are in poor condition. Some of them are exempt species. And when we get into more of the fine details of site plan review, we're going to recommend that some of those exempt trees, especially ones that are poor and those exempt species, that those be removed along the southern lot line so that we can create more area for healthy trees. They would be smaller, but over the long run, they would be healthier. They would provide much better benefit to the property and to the surrounding area if the trees were according to our ordinance. And removing exempt and species and poor trees, it wouldn't require any more replacement, but for those additional trees that are required, it would create some areas to fit in more trees there.
So what I'm gathering is that the review of this area is not complete.
Correct.
Yeah, there's still and you realize, of course, there's two southern areas and two western areas on this project based upon the kind of L-shaped configuration. So I was just concerned with that. It's good to know that that's still being reviewed as to, we like to buffer between the uses. I mean, this is residential to a certain extent, so it's not as critical as it would be if it was a strictly commercial type of venture. But I always concern myself with what the neighboring residents or even the future residents of a couple of those parcels may see, particularly when the leaves have fallen. That's always an issue. The other thing that I had was, you had mentioned in the narrative in the beginning, Patrick, and I don't know if that was just maybe, I don't know, you had mentioned both sides of Ford Road having sidewalk. And I know the northern side does not have an existing sidewalk, and that's not part of this project. So was that just a misspeak, or what did you mean by that?
Oh yeah, probably a misspeak. It was both. Well, a couple of things. Could be both frontages, both the Ford Road frontage and the Gorman Road frontage will have sidewalks, but also both ends of the project along Ford Road, where there will be the frontage itself along Ford Road that the applicant is proposed to do, just the south side of Ford Road along the applicant's frontage, and then from Gorman Road to the sidewalk termination at Bell Tire. Again, only along the south side of Ford Road, but there is proposed to be a sidewalk constructed there as a definite benefit. Okay,
I think that is definitely a great benefit in terms of mobility for those who might want to walk to that shopping center there. We had discussed it in the December 7th meeting, I believe. Wasn't there a proposed access farther south along Gorman that going behind Kroger at one time? Was that just talk at that time, or was that something that was to be coming to fruition?
There's where Gorman Road terminates at the south side, just past that termination is Waterside Drive, which is in the Glens at Cambridge and the whole Cambridge
Traditions.
Yeah. And when they built Waterside, there was a decision made at that time not to connect to Gorman, so as to not send more traffic up to Ford Road and through Gorman.
Mm-hmm.
So as part of this project, there's no change proposed there in terms of any kind of connection, not even an
Okay.
emergency vehicle connection. And on the fire department has stated on this one where their primary connection will be through Gorman into the site. And then there's a secondary connection along Ford Road on the west side of the site.
Okay, so assuming that we had residents from this project that were capable of walking that far, they could just walk along the sidewalk on Ford Road and go to the shopping center.
Right. I
And
don't know if there's any,
that would be their only way to get there.
yeah, I'm not aware of any pedestrian connection that connects Gorman onto
Yeah,
the Traditions.
And so the sidewalk on the east side of the project will be completed all the way to the boundary of the project, correct? Even though the road is not going to be paved that far, the sidewalk will go down that far.
That's correct. The plans illustrate the sidewalk going all the way to its southern lot line along the west side of Gorman.
Okay, all right. And I was really looking at the elevations and the comparisons, and thank you to the project sponsor for providing those comparisons. I love option 2, the 50% brick, and it's not just because it's 50% brick. I just think it looks better, the option 2 elevations, and so that's what I want to see happening here. Option 2 of those. I'm not as concerned with the extra 7-foot height because it is it's a roof line, and I doubt whether people are really going to notice that. And in a PDD situation like this, I think that's a sacrifice well made. As I said earlier, I really like looking at this building, at least what I see from the renderings, and I'm hoping that we do go forward with this. I think it will be a very good project for Canton. I agree with one of the earlier respondents, I think it was Mr. Kowalczyk, who said because he's in the senior class, he wants to see that. So I too am in that class, Mr. Kowalczyk. So if you're still here, I do commiserate with you. I'm okay with this as long as we go with the 50% brick. And some of the modifications that we've already discussed. Do I hear any kind of entertainment of a motion, or is there more discussion that's needed?
Don, I think you're muted.
Don, you're muted. Yeah.
My chair is so squeaky. I apologize. I muted myself because it was making a lot of noise. Could you read my lips though? I move to recommend final approval of the Monarch Grove Planned Development District on said tax parcels as provided in the planned development agreement and plan documents, subject to the requirements of Wayne County and MDOT being satisfied, that the PD agreement addresses how the definite benefits will be completed to the satisfaction of the township attorney and township engineer, and that the building architecture meet the requirements of option 1, correct? Which is the
okay. So let me stop you right there. I think we need to go over that again. I heard comments. I had a comment about which option. I like option 2. Who else likes option 2?
Oh, I'm sorry. I wasn't sure which one was which, so my apologies. I meant to say the one you are all.
Option 2 is 50%. Are you for 50%? I think you stated that.
I did not. I honestly.
You said you could go either way. Okay.
Without getting into lots of detail, I don't feel strongly about the 50% brick requirement all over Canton, but we have that, so.
Well, no, I mean, okay, but the elevations that are there, do you see any physical difference that would sway you one way or the other? I did, but that's just
yeah, I got that. No, I'm flipping back to them real quick. I mean, to me, I kind of liked the contrasting siding on the left brick option, but that's just, obviously I'm a minority.
So are we in consensus that most of us want option 2? Okay. All right. So if you could amend your, I don't know if you need to start right there or just start over and just say
Well,
option 2.
What, yeah, option 2 is what I intended. What I was trying to say was the one with the 50% brick.
Okay. All right. Okay. Proceed. That wasn't the end of it, was it?
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
Support. Oops, oh, man.
All right. Amidst the confusion, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Foster. Any further discussion on this motion, this project? Commissioner Zuber,
Mr. Chairman, should
yes.
we, just for clarification, so everyone who might read this record, should we reread the motion just so everyone's clear which option
Okay.
we're voting on?
Do you mind doing that, Commissioner Zuber?
No, I move to recommend final approval of the Monarch Grove Planned Development District on said tax parcels as provided in the Plan Development Agreement and plan documents, subject to the requirements of Wayne County and MDOT being satisfied, that the PD agreement addresses how the definite benefits will be completed to the satisfaction of the township attorney and township engineer, and that the building architecture meet the requirements of option 2 with 50% brick.
Okay, and Commissioner Foster, do you still support that?
Yes.
All right, we've got a motion on the floor by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Foster. Any further discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote, please?
Sure, Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes. Okay, this goes forth to the trustees. All right, our next agenda is Panda Express Restaurant. This property is located on Michigan Avenue, right near Walmart. It's on the south side of Michigan Avenue, west of Belleville Road, on the Walmart Shopping Plaza. Patrick, what are the details on this?
The applicant is proposing to split 1.31 acres from the Walmart site. And I'll bring it up on the screen here so that it can be illustrated. And right now it's the site is mostly an unused or underused parking lot. And the applicant intends to split that property and construct a fast food drive-through restaurant for a Panda Express. This would require an amendment to the Walmart PDD. The amendment would both allow for the fast food restaurant use on that subject site, and it would allow for the associated reduction in the number of parking spaces for the PDD. The site would function mostly like the Panera site to the west, where it has the drive-through use, and it's in a building in front of the Walmart. The site is zoned C3, and fast food restaurants are special land uses in the C3 district. Therefore, there's not a use modification that's required in the PD agreement. It's mostly an agreement to memorialize the development there on the Walmart site. The major item that arises for our plan development review, and the proposed plan development and the proposed site plan are being reviewed in tandem. The applicant has submitted applications for both the plan development, district amendment, and site plan review. So our letter is a little bit more comprehensive than a normal PD review, just because we include site plan related comments there. The proposed Panda Express site will have one entry point from the existing drive, and it'll have 2 exit points. So if I can get to the page here, there we go. So there's one entry point here on the far east side of the site, and then the exit points are a one-way exit onto the service drive to the south, and there's an exit onto an existing drive that outlets onto Michigan Avenue. It's a one-way exit. The applicant has submitted a traffic impact analysis, and it indicates that the northbound approach on the West Site Drive, which is just west of Panda Express, which is on the Panera site, that drive will have a level of service E. Additionally, the traffic impact assessment states that the eastbound to westbound crossover on Michigan Avenue has the potential to queue back past the West Site Drive, causing additional queuing on the northbound approach at this drive. So if this drive starts to stack up west of Panda, that could cause some additional backups onto Michigan Avenue. The township's traffic engineering consultant has concluded the following in its review letter to Panda's traffic impact analysis. It states, quote, based on the information presented in the study report, the new traffic at the existing and proposed driveways will add to the capacity limitations on eastbound US 12 Michigan Avenue. The proposed driveway on the north end of the Panda Express facility with the west side driveway will be frequently blocked by traffic and should be removed from the plans. Traffic exiting the facility can use either of the two southern driveways. This development will not have a major negative impact on the capacity of US 12 Michigan Avenue. So essentially what's being recommended is that in the northwest corner, this exit only be removed from the site and that the exits only be on the south side. This would have the effect of putting all exiting traffic on the access drive south of the site, and that exiting traffic can be dispersed. Some of that traffic will probably go to the west and be in that west site drive anyway, but exiting traffic would also have the option to go east, and farther east they can access the traffic light depending on what time of day. If it's heavy traffic, they might go look for a light. So there's some better options there and less impact on Michigan Avenue through that west drive. A moment here, I'm gonna stop the screen share, but I can go back to it. For the schedule of modifications and schedule of regulations, the Panda plan meets the zoning ordinance requirements for the C3 district for the front yard setback, side and rear yard setback, and the building height. So it looks like it meets those standards. At this point, I see Commissioner Singh in the audience. So I'm going to promote Commissioner Singh to a panelist. So Commissioner Singh is now joining us in the meeting. And it's at 8:33.
Welcome, Commissioner Singh.
Hello, sir.
Okay.
This is Harpreet from Canton, Michigan, Wayne County. And sorry for the delay.
Okay, glad you're aboard. Patrick, so is the project sponsor here?
I'm looking in the audience. There were two members who have been communicating. One is an engineer with Atwell, and then the other is, I think, the proposed owner or franchisee. But it looks like there's another representative with his hand raised, Mr. Eric Lord. So I can quickly wrap up my review letter. Our recommendation is that we recommend postponing action on the application, subject to 4 different standards, but the most impactful one is removal of that west side driveway access based on the traffic engineering consultant's recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's hear from the project representative if we can.
Okay, Eric Lord, you're now able to talk.
Great. Thank you, Patrick.
Welcome.
Great. Well, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight, and thanks for listening. With me tonight, Dina McAway with NOR. She's the project architect, and Brandon Hayes with Rowe Professional Services. Brandon is our traffic consultant. So Patrick, I don't know if you see them in the audience.
Yep, I see Brandon, and who is the first person?
And then Dina McAway.
Oh, there we go. All right, they're with us.
Great.
Hi, this is Dina McAwee from NOR Architects, and I'm the architect consultant that working with the client on this project.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
And you have
Okay.
Brandon Hayes here as well, folks, traffic consultant with Rowe Professional Services Company. Good evening.
All right. Welcome. I'm glad you're aboard. Okay, so this is a public hearing, so we do need to open said public hearing.
So moved.
Support.
We have okay, we've got a motion to open the public hearing and support by Commissioner Zuber and support by Commissioner Acharya. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote, please?
Sure. Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
That's a yes from me, and so the public hearing is opened at 8:36. All right, Patrick, do we have any, other than the project sponsors or project representatives, anybody raising their hand from the audience?
I don't see anybody else in the audience with their hand raised. Again, if someone's on a phone, I think *9 will raise the hand if someone's on a phone. And I did not receive any public comments through email for this application, so I didn't receive any public comments to share.
Okay.
Looking into the audience, I don't see anybody else with their hand raised.
All right, do I hear a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
We've got a motion by Commissioner Zuber to close the public hearing and support by Commissioner Eggenberger. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that, please?
Sure, and I apologize, Commissioner Singh, I did not call you on the last one because I crossed your name off when you weren't here at the beginning of the meeting, so you will be included this time. Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Singh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yeah, it's a yes from me. Okay, so let's talk to the commission. Now, Patrick, with what we're doing tonight, can we just go ahead and approve a project with the stipulations, or does further study and further analysis have to take place? Let's say concerning that driveway, is this, what's the status of this project in your view?
Well, we had the traffic impact assessment reviewed by the township's traffic engineering consultant, and we had the traffic engineering consultant's letter was published last week. So it was after we had published for the public hearing, but before the meeting packet went out. So I'm not sure if the applicants have had a chance to digest the traffic consultant's letter or not. But in any event, it is worthwhile to have the public hearing, even if it is postponed, just to talk about the plan layout, talk about the issues that are here, and including any major issues that are yet to be resolved. The reason I recommend postponing is that that site driveway is a major sticking point. If they were to remove that, there's another item of the township traffic engineering consultant's letter where they had wanted some additional data so that they could verify some of the modeling. So from my standpoint, that traffic impact assessment is not yet complete to the satisfaction of the township transportation engineer. The planning commission could move it on with conditions, but it would be doing so without knowing what that final layout and what that final traffic information would be until that is resolved between the planning commission and the board.
Okay, all right, that's fair enough. I'm gonna just put this out there to the commission. So do you think we should just go ahead with a discussion about this project, knowing that we're gonna table it anyway? Or do you wanna just wait and have the other processes go through and then have it come back to us? Commissioner Eggenberger.
I would prefer to wait, and it has to do with my memory abilities, because I can see us having a whole discussion about this, then it comes back and I'm like, well, wait a minute, I remember we talked about this, but not sure I remember everything that well. So I would prefer to just postpone it and discuss it when it comes again.
Commissioner Weber.
Yeah, I'd rather act on a entire / complete project as opposed to kind of piecemealing it, especially when it's a traffic issue that's kind of out there in the open. If we were talking about some aesthetic issue or something like that, I'd feel differently, but I think we need the whole picture on this one.
Commissioner Zuber is nodding her head, so I'm assuming there's an agreement, and Commissioner Okan's nodding his head, and I'm in agreement. I think that's the majority of us. So do I hear a motion to table this project?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Zuber to table this project and support by Commissioner Weber. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on this tabling issue?
Sure. Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Singh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes. Okay, so Patrick, so there's nothing that we can do. This is going to be in the hands of the engineers and the project sponsors, right? And it could come back to us within the next month or whenever, right? Is that how that?
Yeah, I would expect as early as the next meeting. At this point, the public hearing has been held, so there's no need to have a public hearing. And based on the rest of staff comments, many of the items of site plan review look good. There's a handful of things that were included in a draft motion, and those are things like Commissioner Weber had mentioned that if they're relatively minor things that can be corrected. So we cited four things, 3 of which can be handled easily. Other than the traffic issues yet to be resolved, the plan looks good from our standpoint with a handful of things to resolve.
Okay, all right. Then that's it with that issue. Let us move on to other business. We have some business to refer to staff. Anand Village, Loomis Armored U.S. Facility, BJ's Wholesale Club. Do I hear a motion to send that to staff for their review?
So moved.
Second.
All right, we've got a motion by Commissioner Zuber to refer those projects to staff and support by Commissioner Weber. Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that, please?
Sure. Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Singh,
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes. And we have a public hearing to set for September 13th, BJ's Wholesale Club. Do I hear a motion to set that public hearing?
So moved.
Support.
Second.
Everyone seconds it.
I'm okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Zuber and support. I'm going to give this one to Commissioner Singh. And Commissioner Zuber, would you call the vote on that, please?
Yes, I will. Commissioner Acharya,
Yes.
Commissioner Eggenberger,
Yes.
Commissioner Foster,
Yes.
Commissioner Okan,
Yes.
Commissioner Singh,
Yes.
Commissioner Weber,
Yes.
Commissioner Zuber, yes, and Chairman Green.
Yes. Okay, any further discussion on anything?
I want to know what the miscellaneous discussion item on our agenda is.
So I think I had thought about doing, in the future, I'll want to start doing like a monthly staff report, just maybe a 1-pager to go over a synopsis of what's new. And I didn't have anything I was ready to issue for this month, so I just left it as kind of a placeholder. But there are a couple of items that I can go over. A couple months ago, we reviewed the Canton Hotel Group, at the proposed hotels at west side of Lilly, north of Ford. The applicants have withdrawn that application, so that will not proceed to the Board of Trustees. The application will just be withdrawn and filed away. And then the only other item that I have is in the coming months, I think the Board of Trustees is going to be interested in starting an update process of the master plan. And of course, the Planning Commission will play a critical role in that process. So in the coming weeks and months, you'll probably start receiving some communications in terms of what the upcoming process might look like. We aren't ready yet to kick anything off, but it is being more discussed. So probably starting in later 2021 and definitely well into 2022, we'll be working on a master plan update. So there'll be more on that to come in the future.
Okay, awesome.
What about Chick-fil-A? I mean, we have to ask, right?
I haven't heard anything new from the applicants, but I'll follow up with them just to see where they are with the application, if they're planning to proceed ahead or if they're waiting on anything else.
Weren't our engineers proceeding with something to do an analysis of stacking for them within that shopping center? I thought that was the next step for them, was either approval or denial from another of a Canton source.
Yeah, we had a meeting last, I think it was last January or February, about the stacking. And we discussed with our engineers possibilities for where a number of cars could fit based on what we've observed in Novi, and trying to get those cars not stacked on Ford Road. And it would weave quite a bit through the parking lot to the north, potentially going to the east onto IKEA. And of course, IKEA is busy on Saturdays, so it's really hard to tell how you can stack up that many cars on a site outside of the road right away and still have that cross-access function, especially next door to a major retailer like IKEA. So that's about where we left it when we looked at it in January and February. I think we had put the ball in the applicant's court and asked them to come up with a way where they could stack a number of cars based on what they've seen in other Chick-fil-A's in Southeast Michigan that have had long stacking spaces. So that's where we left it. We haven't heard anything since. So again, I'll follow up with the applicants and see if they have anything new.
So no one's placed a subtle hint to them, Michigan Avenue.
I think you just did.
That wasn't very subtle, though.
Not subtle at all.
No.
I'm sorry, I had to do that. Anyway, okay, anything else coming up? Any new interest in Canton, Patrick? I know you get feelers from time to time.
Yeah, well, the BJ's Wholesale Club, that's been discussed for a while in terms of occupying the JCPenney building. So next month we'll have the first look at that.
Okay.
That's the major
I gotta be honest. I'm kind of, and this is no way reflective of how I'll vote on it, but I'm kind of disappointed a little bit because I was hoping not to see another big box store on Ford Road, but it is what it is.
Anybody have anything else? Otherwise, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Hey, just real quick,
Yes.
I'm glad to see Gardner White jumped into the Art Van store. Although I wonder if they had to have some kind of a ritual or seance to get rid of the bad karma for a furniture store in that location.
We'll see. We'll wait on that one.
I wonder what that would look like.
I think Gardner White has never closed a store, so hopefully this will stay open.
Yeah, I think that was a great move on their part, from where they were to that building. It's a beautiful building, and I'm just glad that somebody reputable and long lasting, at least to this point, has taken over. So
yeah, I agree.
Good for us. Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Support.
For
all right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, everybody, good night. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you.
And good
Bye,
night.
guys. See you later.
Who are in the
Good night,
audience.
everyone.
Good night.